Using variables in code. In this video, we're going to take a look at number one, how we assign values to variables in real code, and how do we check the type of variables. Let's go in and take a look. So I'm back in IPython. In the last video, I talked about how we can assign values into variables so that the variable acts as a container for these values. For example, here we're assigning the value Rudy to name, and if we look at name, it will give us back Rudy. We can reassign variables depending on situation. So we can say if we have a name and we're keeping track of a name, that name can be Rudy now and it could be John tomorrow. We can simply reassign a new value to the variable name, and if we call name again, there's John. Similarly, we can assign numbers to variables, but that's also not binding. Python is a language that's dynamically typed, which means that different types of data can interchangeably be assigned to the same variable. Now that we have assigned 2018 a number to year, we can reassign a string-based value to the variable year. As you can see, I have reassigned 2018 as a word to the variable year, and if we call year, we get the string back and not the number. We can also assign multiple variables in one go, so we can do m equals n equals 10, and if we look at m, it's 10, and we look at n, it's also 10. This has less practical value, but sometimes you want to assign the same value to two different variables, which in the code that precedes this line, it would do different things to m and n, and this is a very convenient way for you to tell yourself and future programmers collaborating with you on the code that both m and n are equal to the same value. So now let's think about types. So while Python is dynamically typed, everything still has a type. So if we think about types, we have seen integers, which are round numbers or whole numbers. We have seen floats, which are numbers which have a decimal place. So if, for example, we say 50.0, it would tell us it's a float, i.e. there's a decimal place, and it tracks the numbers to the accuracy of, let's say, 1 or 2 or 3 decimal places down the line. We have also seen the type string, so we can say type, and tell us it's a type of string. So how does this work when we are assigning variables? Let's again assign a string to the variable name. As we know, John is of type string. If we now look at type of name, it would again also return string because name is a variable that contains a string. If we now reassign a new value that is not a string to name, so for example we put 0, 2018.0, denoting that this is a float, we can now take a look at the type of name, and we can now see that the type of name has changed. Typing is very important because, as we'll explore in the next two videos when we talk about operators, different types sometimes not compatible with each other. So to give you a very simple example, we know from before that we can use Python as a calculator, so we can do 10 plus 10. What we cannot do is add an integer and a string together. So if we do 10 plus John, for example, Python would give us a type error. So what is a type error? Type error is when two types aren't compatible with each other. So here we see that it says type error, unsupported operand types for plus, so we cannot use plus, on int and string. And this really shines when we have variables, right? Because we can equally say variable 10 equals to 10, variable John equals to John, and we can add variable 10 to itself, but we cannot add variable 10 to variable John because the type of variable John is a string and the type of variable 10 is an int. So this brings us to the last point I want to make in this video, right? Which is, if we think about variables as containers of data, we can simply do a substitution in our heads and think, okay, this variable is a string and this variable is an int. Can I do whatever I want to do with them together? And you can just treat variables like normal data, except that they're a name for a container that contains data. And that's all there is to it. We've just learned about how we assign values to variables in more detail, so we can assign values to variables when we create a new variable, but we can also reassign a value to that variable, and there's no restriction what we assign to a variable in Python. So that's a blessing and a curse. You need to be very careful. We also talked about checking the type of variables. So we used the function type, supplying the variable as an argument, and the type function would return the type of the variable to us. Types are important because sometimes two variables or two pieces of data that are not the same type are not compatible with each other under certain operations. And we need to check the type of variables to make sure that, for example, we can add two variables together. In the next video, I'm going to bring you through in-depth Python operators like addition and subtraction to show you more tricks around how we can utilize this better. I'll see you guys next time.